I wake up every minute with the fever dreams. I put the mind to a limit where it needs to be. I work blind, got vision I don't need to see. I'm picking mind over matter, I believe in me. I need to find more hours in the day to breathe. Need to find more power in the way I be. And when my mind turns out with the painful scenes, I need to scream out loud, I can't stop me. I wanna be the greatest like Rocky. You know I leave them all hating like a hobby. I'm out here making moves like a lobby. And if you ain't with me, it's you lost, see. I got my mind on the facts, I'm a python, grab what I like real fast. Choke until I have everything I attack, everything that I lack, everything that I want, and I see, matter of fact.
I'm my own worst enemy. Only if I let it be. I can control anything if I can just think carefully. I control my destiny. Deep up in my mind I manifest it. Every morning I wake up obsessed and
Green's on the truck, got it masked off, got sprayed yesterday, let it sit overnight, came back there, ripped the tape off everything. You can see how it's actually looking right now. What I did was I masked it all off, took a gray Scotch-Brite to it, Scotch-Brite it lightly, get that paint nice and fresh so this green can actually stick to it. And that's what I'm going to do to every one of these I mask off. Just, you know, for me it's assurance. So that's why I do that. I just want to make sure everything's going to stick when I start peeling this fine line off. So I'm going to do every individually color this way. If it's a candy, if it's a base coat, anything, it's going to get masked off individually. It's going to get scuffed lightly. It's going to get cleaned, and then it's going to get sprayed, and all the little details and everything will go after that. But I just want to show you guys how far along I am right now. The next color is going to be a silver. It's going to take up a lot of this surface area because it goes from the front all the way to the back, around to the back side of the tailgate. So it's looking really good. I'm kind of digging this purple tape. I haven't used it before, but it kind of reminds me of the FBS, the tan tape that you can buy. It's sticky enough to stick on the panel, but it won't pull up the fine line. There are some areas where you had to be really careful where they're crisscrossing and things like that. But other than that, it's working out really well. So I'm gonna get to rocking on this and get the silver all masked off and get all the details done and then sprayed. And I'll show you guys after I'm done. This is what it looks like, all taped up for the silver. This graphic pretty much goes, it's majority of the truck. It's the biggest graphic on the truck, so it's got the holes in it just like the hood. It's that way you see everything behind it. But I want to just show you guys how this stuff looks before I spray it. It's a lot of taping, a lot of masking, but if you take your time and do it right and make sure all the edges are down, it works out great. Like I said earlier, you could probably just spray the whole thing silver, then go back in and tape off each layer. A lot of guys do it that way. A lot of guys will actually lay the graphics first and then mask the graphics off and then do the body color of the truck if you're doing an overall. But this way I do it just because I like to monitor every little color I do. I want to make sure everything's perfect on it. and it's kind of harder to do that once you cover everything, because everything's one solid color at that point. So that's why I do it this way. It comes out really nice, really clean. There's minimal going back in and having to fix anything after I do this. But after I get all these colors done, it'll get cleared 4 or 5 times, sand it back down, then pinstriped and re-cleared, and that's when you do all the touch-ups and things like that. So, but just want to show you guys real quick before I start spraying the silver. The silver does have some airbrush work, highlights, and drop shadows and things like that within the graphic, make it look like brushed aluminum. So once we get the silver on, let it dry, I'll go back in with the airbrush and I'll show you guys what I do with it from there on out. So just want to show you guys this real quick. Alright, so we got the silver on the truck. Now we're going to step into the airbrushing that's inside the silver. The hood I've done already in the past. So what we're going to be doing is the highlights and the dark shadowing. We could leave it just silver on the truck and probably look good, clear it, be done with it, but we're going to give it some depth just like we did the hood. It kind of gives it that 3D look of actually bending and turning. So we're going to put the highlights in first, and then we're going back through and put the shadows in. The way I do this is I always picture things as if the sun was shining down on it. So like if the sun was onto the left over here, it would be hitting everything on this side. So that's why I've got the highlights on this side and the shadows are on the other side. So we're going to do the same thing on the whole, exactly the whole truck here. I've got 2 fenders set up right now. I'm going to do both of the fenders at the same time. So what we're doing first, like I said, is going to be putting the highlights in. Now the way I do this, like I just said, is I act like the truck is outside with the sun shining down on it. That's one good way to do it if you don't understand how shadowing and highlights work. All I've got is over reduced white and over reduced black in my airbrushes. So the way I want to do this is I'm going to follow exactly what I've done on the hood already. I'm going to just go through and act like the sun's on the left shining down, and every top edge is going to get a highlight, and on the bottom edge it's going to get the shadow. Same way on the other side, we're going to do exactly the same thing. It's just going to be flip-flopped because the graphics are on mirror image. But it's going to be exactly the same thing. So that's kind of how I do this. The shadows and the highlights and things like that is I always picture it as realistic as possible rather than just going in there and throwing color in different spots and different places. I want to try to make it look as realistic as possible, as if the truck was already outside the sun. So I got some white airbrushed set all the top edges. Just gonna go through. I don't need much. You can probably barely see that in the photo, but it just needs a little bit. And that's it on that. And then a little bit around the edge right here. And that's it. Even though this graphic is underneath the green that flows right through here, I'm not going to do any like drop shadows within the graphics until everything is pretty much colored and in place, and then I'll go through before I clear it, and then I'll come back through and pinstripe it. The reason why I do that is I want to look at everything before I just go in there and start adding drop showers to graphics or anything like that. So it's just how I do things. So but as far as highlights, you don't need a lot to make it look like it's there. You want it there, but you don't want to overdo it. And do the same thing on this side. You just go back and pull the trigger back. You want to make sure you round your edges. Same way within there. And you just want to kind of kiss the outside edge of that. Boom, done. So now we can move on to the black. Get this white, take this white out of here. Now normally I would have black already mixed up in my gun, but for video purposes, I'm trying to do this as fast as possible to show you guys, because the truck is going to take me a lot longer to do. and I don't want to bore you guys. Make sure everything's nice and clean. If you haven't seen my mixing video of how I mix colors, I did post a video on how to do that. I just go down to the neck, a little bit of reducer. Make sure it's nice and clean. And with the black, I kind of over-reduce a little bit. I don't add too much black in there because I don't want it too powerful. It does tend to get too much power really quick, especially with black and the dark colors. So I always try to over-reduce it because I want to be able to go in here gradually and layer. Once you go dark too quick, you have to pretty much start all over again. Test it out, make sure it's spraying how I like it. Yep. And now on this, we're gonna just follow the same exact, but just mirror image it. And like I said, you don't need a lot. You kind of want to just build it up. And then with this graphic, I did a shadow going in between because I'm acting like this is rolled. So on the high spot, it's actually not going to get a highlight, it's going to get shadow. So even though on these fenders you don't see a lot of it, I'm still going to put it there because it is there. And same way with that, you're just gonna create the illusion. Even though you don't see much of it, you still want to do it. Because like I said, it is there. Sit back and look at it. And boom. That's how I do that. It's not much in this silver area, but it's just enough to pull it off and make it. Once I peel all this tape off, it'll bounce everything off and it looks a lot better rather than just leave it plain silver. So I'm gonna get some reducer in my gun, clean it out a little bit, and we're gonna peel this tape off. So once I start peeling this tape, you'll start seeing just how much a little bit goes. You might not, it might be really hard to tell, but once I clear this thing and get it out in the sun, you're gonna be able to see those shadows. And when you're peeling this, any type of graphic you do, you kind of want to pull away from the surface. That way you're not peeling up any of your work. It's probably one of the things that's done often is peeling tape wrong and then screwing up the work you already did. See, it just took that fine line with it. About got that one. Oh. And there you go. You can kind of see how it kind of moves with just a little bit of highlights, a little bit of shadows, how it's going to look throughout the whole entire truck. So I like it. I'm going to move on, keep doing this to the whole truck, and I'll show you guys when I get all the tape and everything peeled off what it looks like. All right, got all the tape peeled off for the silver. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. Some of it is still masked off. Obviously, want to leave this mask, so I'm just going to show you guys what the silver looks like with the green so far, and we'll move on to the next color. It's turned out really good. You can start to see it coming together a little bit by just adding 2 colors. There's the other fender that we did. Back of the tailgate, which rolls down to the back of the bed pan, or the roll pan, as most of you call it. And just some of the little circles that I made, I cut out with the vinyl. It just a little bit of that throughout the whole thing, and it makes it, you know, something a little bit more than just adding color there. You can tell by the highlights and the shadowing and stuff how well that actually comes out. Just, I mean, when you're doing this stuff, a little goes a long way. You don't need to overdo it, because like I said, when you start clearing this stuff and you take it outside, it's just going to amplify what you did. So if you would just black everything out or white everything out, it would just kill what you put on there. So a little, like I said, a little bit goes a long way when you're adding these little details like this. So, but I just want to show you guys what it looks like right now, and it's coming out fantastic. And like I said, the next color, I'll show you the little door jamb here. You know how the door jamb's coming along. I mean, it don't look like much right now, but I think by the time we add the next color, which is going to be the orange, it's actually a tangerine orange. It's a candy. I think by the time we do that, it's going to really pull everything together even more, obviously. But super happy with the way it comes out. There's a little bit humid in here, or there's a lot of moisture in here, so I'm going to let the air kind of get all the stuff out of the shop, and I'll go start taping off on the orange for the candy tangerine, and we'll go from there. That one does get a little bit of texturing to it, so I'll update you guys when I get to that point. I won't bother you guys with the boring taping and all that other stuff, because it literally takes a long time to tape some of the stuff. Like that silver, I probably had, I mean, probably a good 2.5 hours just in taping that silver up. So, but you want to take your time when you're doing this, because you don't want to be making stepwards going backwards and having to redo different colors, because then you're just going to waste your time and spend more time than you should be spending it somewhere else in the project. So that's why I do these individually, and this is why I do it this way, because I know once I peel that tape off, I don't have to worry about pretty much nothing. I can just go on, you know, wipe it back down and go to the next color, and after that go to the next color, and then we can final clear it. So it's going to look really cool. We got 3 more colors left. Like I said, the orange is going to be next, and then I'm going to do the teal, and the last is the background, which is going to be the checkered flag like you guys saw on that hood, and that gets a candy oriental blue on top of that. So, and that's going to cover the whole bottom of the truck. And then once you peel that off and peel the other tape line off, that's kind of got that other graphic that holds the stock collar on top. Once you peel that off, it's going to look killer. So I'll give you guys an update when I get to it, but like I said, I'm going to let the shop air out, and then we'll start on the orange taping. So see you guys in a little bit. All right, The silver's on for the candy tangerine orange. I went through and airbrushed all the textures and everything that I'm putting underneath the candy orange. I want to show you guys what it looks like now before I put the candy on, and I'll show you guys what it looks like afterwards. That way you guys can get an idea of what it's going to look like. Right now it's just silver with some black spots on it, but once I go put that candy on, it's going to totally change the look of it. So this is what it looks like with all the little textures. If you get really close, you can kind of see. That's just a little bit, but that little bit makes it go a long ways. And then the door jambs and everything's done as well. Trying to get you guys a good, it's kind of dark in here right now. Pretty windy outside too, so trying to get you guys a good camera. That way you can see. That one's not really shining that well. You kind of see on here the light hitting it. Here's the other side. I don't know if you guys can see that, if it's picking up or not, but jams and everything are done in that way. It's just a little bit of something that once you put a candy over top of it, if you're doing a silver, gold, or whatever you want to do, I just took over reduced black paint in my airbrush, and I've got this stuff that'll create this stuff that spreads the paint out, and you just kind of airbrush around it, and it gives us this like texturing, like old Marlboro texturing effect slash water slash whatever you want to try to call it. But it's kind of like a little grunge, but this is what it'll look like after it's done. If you guys can see inside there, you can see all the little textures in it. Some spots, when you get this stuff cleared, you really see this stuff pop. So gonna go and let this dry for a little bit because it is kind of damp. Make sure all the tape and everything's pushed down on it again, and then I'm gonna go back there and probably put 4 or 5 coats of tangerine orange on it, and then after that I'll rip the tape back off when it's done drying, and I'll show you guys what it looks like with this third color. And then after that we just got 2 more to go, so it's gonna be done here really quick. So I'm trying to get this all ready for, it's Thursday right now, so I'm thinking about Tuesday, Wednesday next week I can put the first round of clear coat on the whole truck and bury this stuff, and then go back there, sand it back down, pinstripe it, and then bury it again, and get it all slicked out and put it back together and ready to go off. So that's the goal. Everything's going really well, so as long as no hiccups, we'll be right on schedule about the end of April, beginning, of the next month. But that's the goal. So I'll show you guys later once I get this stuff peeled off what it looks like after the orange is all on it. So got everything taped up for the turquoise candy. That's going to have the water effect underneath of it. I'm going to show you guys really quickly how I do that. But first I'm going to show you this turquoise that I want to make. It's called Summertime, Oriental Summertime. It is a transparent color, so it is a candy, which means every coat you put on it, it gets darker and darker. And I'm simply going to put that over silver. So I'm going to show you this color real quick. It's this one right there. So you guys kind of get an idea what it's going to look like on the truck. But first, like I said, I'm going to show you guys how I do this water effect. It's really simple. It looks complicated, but it is so simple. Anybody can really pull this off. You just have to have some patience and let it do its thing. But the only thing you need to do this is obviously your the color you're going to be spraying onto to do this, it needs to be a darker color than it does the final color. And I mean by that is because this is going to be something you're going to be spraying over water, so you also need a little pumper or whatever you want to use, spray the water onto, and you're just going to spray it. You can create different drops, sizes, you can do whatever you want with this to make whatever the effect you want to make, but essentially you're going to be spraying over top. Like, I'm going to show you guys on this fender real quick. The blue is going to be, I'm going to directly do this over this blue. A lot of guys do it over black and use like a pearl, and that it gives it the same effect. It's kind of like a ghosting effect, but I'm going to use silver over top of this because I am doing a candy color, so that's the reason behind that. But you always want your surface to be darker than what the color is you're going to be spraying. So when you get done doing this and the water dries, you can wipe it off, and that blue underneath of it's going to be popping through that silver. It's going to give a water effect. So I'm going to show you guys really quickly how I do this. It's not rocket science. It's really simple. I'm just going to get, you know, a mist or something that I like. You just got to kind of mess with your nozzle settings. You know, you get kind of like you can get tons of mists. You can get a streamline, or you can get like a mist like this. So it works really well either way. Obviously you want to do different techniques throughout the whole thing. That way it's not one solid technique to the whole entire process. So I've already prepped this. Same way with all the other colors I've been laying out. Really important, since this blue has been sitting on this truck for a while, the base coat, it does need Scotch-Brited. Going through and make sure all your edges are good, because the last thing you want to do is you go put tape on this down the road, or if I go into the next color, put tape on it, and then when I pull that tape off when I'm finished, it peeling up the paint. A lot of guys, you know, they just go through and re-Scotch-Brite it, or they'll use like adhesion promoter on top of it, something to get it to bite into that original top coat that you have on there already. So I just go through with the gray Scotch-Brite pad, make sure I Scotch-Brite everything really well, clean it, and go back through and tack it off. And that's just my process. It's just something that I've always done. So do either way. You can either, like I said, use an adhesion promoter or some type of top coat that gives it that bite. That way when you put tape on things down the road, it won't peel it back up, things like that. So so I'm just going to be messing with this here. I'm going to create little different drop sizes throughout this whole thing. And you can kind of see, I'm going to get this thing in the light for a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see that. It kind of just creates a water effect is all it is. So once I get that, I'm going to I've already got silver mixed up in my gun. Now you want to use not really high pressure, because the one thing most people do when they do this is they want to crank up the pressure on the gun. People tend to want to crank up the pressure on your the gun, and what the problem that happens is that you start moving these water spots around, and it doesn't give it the same effect. So that's one thing you got to learn how to adjust your control with what you're doing on your spray gun, on your paint gun, to get the right result that you want. So simply just going to be dusting this on. You can kind of see it already kind of doing what I want it to do. You always want to wrap your edges. You know, if you get some that run like that, let it be. Just because it's going to create an illusion of water. So let the water do whatever it wants to do. Don't force it to do anything, and just let it sit there and dry. But since we are doing a candy color, we need to get this all silver. and you can really see the water spots in it with that silver being there. So I would call that pretty much almost done. I'm gonna let it dry, let it tack off. I'm gonna move on to the other parts of the truck, and then I'm gonna come back through, wipe anything excess off that I can wipe off of it, and you can go back in and you can actually do more on top of it if you really wanted to. So just want to show you guys that real quick. I'll show you once I get it in turquoise what it's going to look like with the color on it. So I'll be right back when I get this done real quick. All right, I'm going to show you guys this real quick. Got the silver on, got the water effect done. I'm going to let it dry, let the water fully dry off the panel. I already wiped it down and everything, but I'm gonna let it fully dry because when I put that candy on top of this silver, I don't want any water or anything affecting it, because we do want that full turquoise color to come through. But I'm just gonna show you guys what it looks like. And this is, like I said, this is wiped off. All the water is wiped off the silver, and this is what it's gonna look like, just amplified through that color. Turned out really, really nice. And it just looks like it's been parked outside, rained on, but like I said, this is all fully wiped off. This is all dry. I'm just gonna let the water fully dry off the tape before. And you want to wait probably a good hour, you know, depending on what the temperature is outside, if you got wind blowing through here like I do or not. But if you have more air moving, the faster it's going to dry. But you can get the idea of what it looks like, and it literally looks like it's been outside being rained on and water's just beating right off of it. So that's exactly what we want it to look like. Like I said, it's a really simple effect. You just need water, a darker color underneath of what you're spraying, and you know, just let it sit and dry. And if you're using salt, I mean, obviously you got to use solvent paints, because water-based paints and water, you can't mix the two. It's not going to do the same effect. It's probably going to react to it, but you have to use solvent paints. But like I said, just let it sit, let it do its thing before, if you are doing a candy color, before you either clear it or you top coat it. And with taping all this stuff off like this, sometimes you gotta go back through and fix your tape, because like I said, water has been on it. It is a lot of water you're using. So you just want to go through and make sure your tape's good before you go on to the next step. But other than that, that's all you do. I mean, you just spray some water on it, find a pattern that you like, and spray your color, or your color right on top of it, and let it do its thing. And once that solvent dries, you can take a rag and wipe it, and it's going to leave spots like this throughout the whole thing. And when you put a candy on top of this color, it's just going to be that turquoise, but it's going to have multi different colors, because it's blues underneath of it and the different layers of silver on top of it, and it looks really, really cool. It's an old school trick, really, really easy to do. That's the fun of custom painting, is figuring out ways to do things and making things look different. And that's why I like doing this stuff, because it's all custom. It's all what you make of it. It does take some, you know, you got to know a little bit about paint, a little bit of artistic skill, but other than that, it's not really hard to pull off. So I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna put some candy or turquoise over top of it, that Summertime Oriental from House of Color. Probably gonna do about maybe 4 or 5 coats of it, depending how strong I make it. And then after that, we're gonna let it sit for another probably hour or two and pull that tape off of it. And then we got one more color to go. And I believe that is what I used. I used cobalt blue for the last over silver, doing the checkered pattern like you guys saw on that hood. That's already been done. So other than that, it's ready to be set, dry, on to the next step. So we'll show you guys when I get done with that turquoise. It's gonna look really, really nice. What's up, everybody? I'm back. just pulled the tape off everything for the teal. Looks really good. I want to show you guys what it looks like right now and what I'm already doing ahead of time for the next color, because we got one more color to go, and that's going to be the cobalt blue. And inside that cobalt blue is going to be the checkered pattern, just like we see in the hood here. It's going to be all this checkered and this dark blue that I'm taping off, and this is going to be the last color. And then what we'll do from there is we will go through and I'll do like touch-ups, anything that needs touch-ups. I noticed some of the green things. We'll go through and do any touch-ups that I need to do. I noticed a couple areas in the green that needs a little bit of a paint fixed. Not a big deal, you know, 5-10 minutes of that, and then we can peel all the tape off everywhere and then get ready for that first session of clear. And what that is, what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to blow probably 3 or 4 coats over all the graphics, and then 1 or 2 coats over the whole truck to bury everything, and then let it dry for a couple days, come back, sand everything as flat as I can without burning through, and then clean it all, and then start to hand pinstripe all these colors, because everything does get pinstriped on here. So it is going to be pretty busy, but it's getting there. I mean, I say we're probably about 70% of the way done, and then we can get to that final clear stages, and then from there it's just sanding and buffing and then putting it back together. So like I said, I'm shooting for the end of April right now. I think it's what, the 18th right now, so it's getting really close. We might go over a little bit, but we're not in a hurry because we still got all the way to June for the first truck show. But I want to get it back to him, that way he can button anything up and do anything extra that he wants to do in time for the show. So I want to show you guys this real quick, what it looks like right now. Obviously the fender is off, but it is coming out really good. You can kind of see all the colors popping. And then I'll show you guys the hood again, where we added the teal down here, and then I added some up here. And then you can kind of see on this, everything's getting pinstriped the same colors as the hood on the truck. So you kind of tell already what colors each color is going to be, as well as far as pinstripe goes. The teal, I'm thinking I'm going to do like maybe like a bright pink on this teal for a hand pinstripe on the outside edges of it, just kind of a little bit off. I don't want to do the same color as this magenta I got over here, but I want it to be really bright. So I'm thinking pink, or maybe like a really bright lime green, to kind of really throw that color out there against that teal. And here's one of the fenders. Now this fender, it's completely done. It's ready for clear. There's no other colors going on the fenders. So this is what it's going to look like before I clear it. And then the regular color blue is up top. So you kind of see where the truck is going. And then this side, I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing over here. This I've already started taping off for that bottom color. So everything below this orange line right here, everything below this is getting that cobalt blue with the checkered pattern in it. So everything below, pretty much below the teal up in here, all that blue is getting. So pretty much from here all the way down, up all the way around here, back is getting that cobalt blue, and it's going to be checkered. I'm not going to do the everywhere checkered. I'm thinking I'm going to start down here, and I'm going to try to fade it towards the back and cover the whole back of the truck in checkers, as well as the tailgate. The customer didn't want everything checkered, but I kind of talked him into maybe like kind of fading it in. That way it's not everywhere, but it is going to be towards the back end because the hood does have it. So I believe that, I'm a strong believer that it does need to be in there just to match the hood and make everything flow really well together. But we're not going to go too crazy on it. But all that stuff, I've already, like I did the hood, I hand cut all those squares, and I hand laid every one piece by piece. But I'll probably do the same thing with the truck, cut them all out, hand lay them where I want them. That way I can get the flow of the truck and everything to go really well together. So I need to finish taping this side off. I need to finish masking this side off, taping and fine line it off for that cobalt blue. But the other side is completely done. I can go ahead and start masking that side if I wanted to. But first I'm gonna lay out the fine line. The only reason why I'm refining lining it is this is kind of a, you kind of, if you're a painter, you kind of want to, depending what you're doing and how much taping you're doing, that fine line had been on this truck ever since I first started doing the graphics. So it's been probably 2 or 3 weeks that this fine line's been on here. And with our weather, it's been so bipolar up and down. And I wanted a fresh new stripe on it for the fine line areas, because I don't want anything lifting up on me. So you be your own judge on that, if you want to go ahead and refine line everything or not. To me, it's that little extra reassurance for me. That way I know all these colors are going to be the same color when I get done spraying the silver and the cobalt blue. Nothing's going to blow underneath of it. So that's just me. It does take a little bit more time to do it that way, because obviously you got to redo everything you already put down. But that's just me. I'm going to do it. I've got the other side already done. It's going to take me probably an hour total to remask everything off. So and then we can start spraying. The silver will go first, lay our checkers out, and then the candy blue over top of it. So I'm gonna get to doing, I've got a lot to do still, so I'm gonna get to jamming on this, and hopefully by the time I get the cobalt blue on there, or before I get it on there, I can show you guys what it looks like before I started spraying silver. So that way you get an idea of what it's gonna look like and the steps to do it. But I want to get the jamming on this thing, and I'll be right back. We are on the last color step there is to do on this truck. I've got everything pretty much masked off. What I'm doing right now is laying out the squares for the checkered pattern. I want to show you guys the process of how I do that. Especially something that needs to be exactly symmetrical and exactly the same size as everything else, I always use my 34-inch plotter. It just makes life a lot easier. I could have done this and cut all of these by hand pretty quick, but why not just let the computer do? I spent the money on it, so I'm going to use it for its purpose. But let me show you guys how far along I am. We're really close to spraying silver and then the candy blue on this thing. So I'll show you guys where I'm at right now on this. So got everything masked off, all the graphics, everything that's going to go that candy blue cobalt. I believe that's what it is. It's the cobalt blue is ready to be sprayed. Everything is masked off. I've already scotch branded it all, and as you see, work your way towards the back here, you can see where I started laying out the checkers. I've already got one side pretty much done, and the tailgate, so you guys can check it out. And that's pretty much where I'm going to fade it out at right there. I'm not going to do the whole, he didn't want everything filled with the checkers. I know the hood is filled with all the checkers, so he wanted it kind of to fade in and fade out. So I'm going to stop it pretty much in that area on the other side. So this side's going to be wrapped around all the way towards that edge right there. I might go a little bit higher up once I get it done and step back and look at it before I start spraying the silver. But for right now, this is how I'm going to do it. I've got about probably another 20-30 minutes of laying these out. And yes, I do lay these out one by one. I'll lay them out one by one, hand by hand. The reason why I do that is because of the contour of all the edges. You want to make sure everything's laid out evenly. You got to make sure this stuff is laid out perfectly each square, because they aren't exactly cut 3 by 3 inch. So you got to make sure everything lines up perfect in order to pull this effect off. It's not hard once you get going, but to figure it out, it does take some time, but anybody can do it. It's not really that big of a deal. So that's what it is though. And then once I get this checkered done, I'm simply going to spray everything silver. Everything gets sprayed with the checkers on it. So all the blue that you see on this truck is going to get sprayed silver. Takes 3 to 4 coats of cover on this blue. And then once I get that done, I'm going to let it dry, let it, you know, tack off to where I can tack it off actually with the tack rag. And then what I'm going to go do is come back in with that candy cobalt blue over top of that silver. Now this is where it gets kind of tricky, because I did the hood a long time ago. You know, it's probably been, you know, 4 or 5 months ago I've done this hood. So I gotta kind of remember how I did the hood, because I'm gonna do the exact same thing on this truck to make it all match. And what I did on that hood was I put 3 coats of candy cobalt blue down. Now that's not gonna cover completely. It's gonna take up some more coats to cover this in cobalt blue. So once I get 3 coats of candy done, I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna take all these checkers off one by one. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna expose that stock blue behind those checkered squares. And then I'm gonna come back in with some more candy blue, cobalt blue, same color. I'm gonna spray another 6 coats on top of it. And that's gonna make everything a little bit darker and push those squares even further back, because it's already a darker blue. So compressor just kicked on. It's getting kind of noisy in here. I'm gonna get to finishing these squares and I'll show you guys what it looks like by the time I get to that cobalt blue stage. Candy cobalt blue is finally finished. I've got everything right now unmasked, all the tape's off of it. I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like. So what I did was I went through, laid the checkers like I said, and then I put silver over everything, rebased everything with the silver, took 3 coats of silver to cover, went back through, put 3 coats of cobalt blue candy on top of that silver once it was dried. And then I went back through and I pulled all the checkered squares off that were not exposed. I went back again and add another 5 coats of cobalt blue over top of that to give it that depth between the checkers and the actual cobalt blue color. I know you guys seen the hood multiple times. I want to show you guys again what that checker pattern looks like, and I will show you the truck what it looks like. So this is the hood. You see the checkers in there. The checkers are a little bit darker than some of the spots. That's what happens when you layer the candies like that. Candies are pretty much just a transparent base, and every coat you put on gets it darker and darker and darker and darker. When you're doing checkers, things like that, you want to kind of offset what it actually looks like. So that's why I did 3 coats, pulled it off, and did another 5 over top of that. That continues a total of 8 coats over everything. Usually these candies cover anywhere between 6 and 8 coats. Depends how heavy you spray. Now this does have a lot of paint on it, so I was a little bit conservative about my spraying technique. So I wouldn't have put 8 on there because that's what I did the hood with. And I'm trying to match this exactly like I have the hood. So I'm gonna show you guys the truck with everything unmasked and tell me what you guys think. Now the checkers I faded in down here at the bottom. You can see where they start and they wrap all the way around towards the back. And then obviously the tailgate. I did something a little simple. The customer's name starts with an M, so I kind of did this silver, kind of like an M shape, if you guys can make it out. Kind of looks like M, right? Just not connected at the bottom. but it runs on the back of the side of the truck right here, perfectly down towards the license plate area. It's a little bit of something different. It's not anything, it's probably not everybody's taste, but I created this thing to stand out. Customer wanted kind of old school retro theme, style, not theme, but style from back in like the 90s, early 2000s. And right now it may not look like a lot, but everything's gonna get hand pinstriped. So that's gonna make it even more, you know, it's gonna pop even more with all these colors and all these pinstripes going on top of it. Now, I'm gonna show you guys this up close of what it actually looks like. Now, I've separated everything with the fine line. A lot of guys don't do that. A lot of guys just wanna do exactly butt up against the color. I did that on purpose because that's where my hand pinstripe's gonna lay. That's gonna be my guide. I'm not a pinstriper by any means. You know, I mess around with it, but the more I do it, the more I practice, the better I'm getting at it. So for me personally, that's how I lay out things. That way I have a guide. My goal is to go around right now, mark everything with a piece of tape that needs spotted in, fixed. Anything that had a bleed through with the paint onto the back of another color or anything like that, that needs fixed before it gets cleared. Now, I'm gonna clear it probably 3 or 4 different coats, trying to bury what's on there already and lock that in after I do all these fixes. There's not much, there is some, but I wanna try to get as perfect as I can. That way, when I go to pinstripe this thing, after I sand it back down and get it as flat as I can and pinstripe it, all I have to worry about is re-clearing it. Now, right now, the way the truck sits, like I said, not only needs certain areas fixed where the color is bled through on some spots. You might not be able to tell right now. There's I think there's probably 3 or 4 spots that actually need fixed. There's not much, but first of all, it needs cleaned. I'm going to show you guys what cleaner I use. It's a water kind of cleaner. It's a post cleaner, post sanding cleaner, and it's perfect for something like this that's not cleared, especially when you can only do this over solvent. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm talking about here. It's this post sanding cleaner through House of Color, KC20. This stuff is magic. It's great for cleaning things. It cleans everything really well. And the main thing is being an airbrush artist, or if you're doing graphics or any type of artwork where you're laying colors and colors and colors, where you need to continuously clean things, as long as you're using solvent base paints, you can use this cleaner over top. No issues. It's not going to pull your color up. It's not going to do anything weird to it. It's simply just going to clean the panel off and show you what it looks like when it's clear coated, which is a big plus, because if you're doing a lot of airbrush work, or if you're doing a lot of graphics and you just want to get an idea of what it's going to look like, wipe that sucker down, let it dry. It's going to show you exactly what it looks like when it's cleared. And not only that, it's going to clean it. So that's the more important. If you get doing something with a lot of overspray and you got to clean that stuff up, wipe that stuff over it, and it's going to take most of that out of there. I love that stuff. That's what I use on everything. Before I clear, after I clear, if I need to re-clear it, I use it on everything. So I'm going to do that first, and once I get it cleared, I'm going to go through and touch up these spots. And then after that, we're going to go back in with the airbrush. And every one of these colors, depending on how it lays on the truck, I'm going to go back through and drop shadow things and make it pop even more. Give it that 3D depth before I go back in and pinstripe it. Now my goal is to clear it, like I said, 3 or 4 coats, wait a day or 2, come back in and sand it flat as I can without burning through the clear, and then pinstripe it. But I think I'm going to try to do some of the pinstriping before I clear it. For somebody, if you're not familiar with pinstriping, everything's done by hand, so you got to have a really straight hand to do it. But the way we're pinstriping this truck, it's kind of like an old school technique of cross hatching, splices, and it's not really have to be perfect because of the way the style is on this truck. So I think I might be able to pull it off without clearing it. I'm going to do some areas, I'm going to test them out, and before I do that way, if I can save, you know, half a gallon of clear and pinstripe it before I clear it and not mess up, then that's going to save me time and it's going to save me money in the long run with the clear. The stuff's not cheap, but if you're not understanding what I'm talking about, is when you're pinstriping graphics like this and multiple, you know, at once, pinstripe paint, when you lay the pinstripe down, it's technically a glob of paint that you're gliding across the surface to create, you know, a different outline. Pretty much, you're pinstriping it. It's pretty plain and simple, but you gotta have a really steady hand. You gotta have a really steady hand to do it, but if you do, I mean, a lot of guys are awesome at pinstriping. Like I said, I'm not so much, but I'm getting the hang of it more and more I do it. But it's so thick. So the goal with these trucks, like you might go to some shows and you might look down the side of it and it's just glass and it's pinstriped, it's got all these graphics, and a lot of people are wondering how you do that. The way you hide that stuff to where it looks like glass and you can just rub your hand over it without filling all the edges, that's clear. You know, you hog on as much clear as you can in one setting, you sand it down flat, you clean it, and you re-clear it again as many times as you can until that stuff is buried. So a lot of these cars and trucks that you're seeing that have these perfect paint jobs on, you know, they're getting cleared multiple times. They might have 15, 20 coats of clear on top of it, and they might be adding, you know, 4 or 5 coats each time they're clearing it. That way you can bake it, let it sit, let it dry, and they're sanding it back down as flat as they can and re-clearing it. And that is called flow coating. If you're not familiar with the term, that's what flow coating is you're sanding it back down to re-clear it. And that's just because you're trying to bury everything. And there's some paint jobs out there where you can see everything. You can see all the lines, you can run your hand across it, you can feel all the bumps and ridges and everything. And to me, that's technically not the way you should do it. If somebody's gonna be spending a lot of money and time and doing a paint job like this, everything should be like glass. It should be consistently even across the whole panel. And you got to bury all those lines and those pinstripes you're putting on it. And with pinstripes, like I said earlier, it takes a lot of clear to bury that stuff. You know, some guys can do it in like 5 coats and get away with sanding it back down and do it, you know, like that. But I like to get as slick as I can, so I'll put, you know, 10 to 15 coats of clear on a truck total, and then sand it back down at the very end and wet sand and buff the entire edge to edge to get it like glass. So that is the plan. First, I'm going to take some tape and go around, mark everything so I know where everything's at that needs fixed. Then I'm going to tear the doors off. I'm going to stick it on this tree. I got this tree right here. This tree's awesome. You can actually put 2 door panels on it, one on each side, and that way you're not clearing, and you can actually go edge to edge when you're clear coating a full entire vehicle and make sure it's covered 100%. That works out great with this, or you can get like an ultra stand through Innovative. That ultra stand can do hoods as well. This can do hoods as too. But I'm gonna get to doing this, get the door panels and the whole door actually off the truck again, all hung on this tree. Then I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna physically go through and airbrush, drop shadows, anything that needs airbrush work before it gets pinstripe, because the pinstripe is the very last thing as far as paint wise that needs done. You don't want to go back through and have to redo something when you're pinstriping. You want to be able to go straight to clear at that point. So I've got about probably 2 or 3 hours worth of touch-ups and shadowing and drop shadowing, things like that on this truck. So I'm gonna get to it. I'll show you guys what it looks like. You probably won't be able to tell in the camera on the video, just because right now you might be able to look at it and see no mistakes at all. But being in person, there are just a little bit of things that bother me with it that I want to get it fine-tuned before I clear coat it. So I'm gonna get to it. I might pull you guys up, do like a time-lapse video with you of me airbrushing some things. It's not anything crazy, it's just drop shadows and that sort. I mean, it's nothing really special, so I'm not gonna bore you guys too much. But once this thing gets into clear coat, I'll definitely put that on this video, that we can see what it looks like with all these candies. Because when you clear coat all these candies, you add that much clear, and the type of clear that we're going to be using on this, it's going to pop off that panel. and it's gonna look really awesome outside in the sun. So I can't wait. Like I said, I've got about probably 2.5, 3 hours worth of work before we get to that point. So I'm gonna get to it and waste no time. So show you guys once more what the truck looks like right now. That way, next, when I pull that do that other video, you can see exactly what it looks like afterwards. 4 hours later, got everything pinstriped the way that I want it pinstriped, the way it needs to be pinstriped. Everything's cleaned up. There are some few minor touch-ups, and I decided to do those after I fully clear the whole truck and sand it back down. That way everything is locked in right now. And if I get overspray or anything, issues like that, after I clear it, it's not a big deal because I can literally just take thinner or something and wipe it off once it's fully dry and sand it back down. So that's the goal of what I'm going to do, is the plan. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. It's still in pieces, but I went ahead and retaped a lot of different spots that were either the plastic was peeling or tape wasn't sticking well. So I'm going to show you guys what I've got right now and give you an idea of what this thing's going to look like when it's cleared. I mean, this thing's going to be bright. When it's out in the sun, it's going to really pop. There are some airbrushing details that I'm going to do once it's after cleared as well, once I get done touching everything up. But here it is for now, right now, before clear. And I went ahead and decided that the orange is going to say that other lime green pinstripe color is what they say. It is kind of, I mean, it's not really lime green to me, but that's what it is, and I decided to keep it that way. I think it came out really clean. I just decided to do a straight clean pinstripe on it, nothing crazy like I did with the other green, but you could tell, especially when this thing gets wet and cleared, these colors are going to pop off. The jam's all done. The backside as well. Like there's a spot right there. I kind of misread my pinstripe, so that's one of the spots. Well, once it's cleared, I'll fine line tape this off and I'll sand that edge down a little bit if there is one, and I'll blow some of this blue back in and that will be gone. But that's just an idea of the little things I need to fix here and there. That they're my mistakes, but you're gonna have that when you're doing big jobs like this. You're gonna always, that's one thing I want to explain to you guys. Like, paint's not, even though, I don't care how good you are, you're always gonna have things that are going to be needed touched up when you're doing this much taping, this much pinstriping. And I'm not a pinstriper by all means, but I can pull stuff like this off where it doesn't have to be super clean. It is a kind of it's a look, and I can pull this stuff off and make it look really good. So but that's just one thing you guys are going to understand is, mistakes. You're going to have mistakes. You're going to have things that you need to go back through and touch them up, especially when you're doing like a really like, I guess you consider a show quality type build. And there's a lot of things on this truck that I would like to go through and fix, but we don't have the time as far as that. Just, nothing major wrong with the paint wise, but just little things here and there that I've noticed. But as much clear as we're gonna put on this and all the blocking we're gonna do on it, I guarantee you're not gonna be able to see these things out in the sun outside when it's fully assembled, driving on the road or at a show, because it's gonna have a lot of clear on it. So here's the other side. And you can see how just that little bit of a drop shadow, how it does against that silver and that blue. Just a little bit. You don't need much. Just a little bit goes a long way. But even with the silver, I decided to do just a really clean pinstripe all the way back to tie everything in. And I've got everything pretty much how I want it. ready for a final cleaning and tack rag, and then a full clear. But that green against that orange, it's just crazy. It looks really, really good with all the other colors we chose to do. The only thing I didn't do was the graphics on the inside of the door, because these doors are so narrow inside of here. I even explained to the customer that I wasn't going to do inside the jams right here, because once you open the door, you won't even see this by the time you add all this stuff in here. Same with this side. No, nothing's done, just that, because you do kind of see it does need to end somewhere. So that's why I fully pinstriped that right there, but you won't see any of this stuff in here. And like I said, there are going to be a little bit of some airbrushing, you know, detail little effects, old school effects that I'm willing to do inside the graphics, you know. So I'm going to do that after it's fully cleared, like I explained before. But I've got everything ready for not final clear, but the first round of clear, which will be, you know, 4 or 5 coats, you know, dictating what it's going to actually look like when I'm to that stage, whether I need to do 4 or 5 to bury all this stuff, because some of these pinstripe lines, some of these colors, it's another thing, some of these colors are more transparent than the other ones, and that also has to do with how you reduce your pinstripe paint, because you do have to reduce them to be able to pull these clean lines, you know, consistently for a long ways, especially the one across the bed. You got to reduce the stuff just right to be able to pull that line all at once. Very, very tricky, but if you go really slow and you pay attention to what you're doing, have proper lighting, you can pull it off, because I did. I mean, they're not perfect, but I can pull it off. Anybody can pull it off, because my hands are not made, you know, they're like an airbrush and things like that and layout graphics, but pinstriping is a whole new ball game, and I'm still learning, but the only way to learn is actually doing so. But that's it. Today is Sunday night. It's about 8:30. I'm gonna get this thing ready. That way all I gotta do is walk in after work, come in here, clean it. Like I said, final clean. I'm going to use that post sanding cleaner like I explained earlier, either in this video or the last video. This stuff, just give it a good wipe down, get all the dust and dirt and all the grime that's been sitting underneath the plastic, and any overspray issues that are still on the truck. It'll pull those without pulling the color up with that post sanding. You can't do that with water. It's only working with solvent paints, which is, if you're not familiar with house color, that's all they are, solvent based paints. So that stuff's awesome, you know, helps you clean everything really, really well. And then what I'll do is I'll let that dry, and by the time that happens, I can tack it off and shoot some clear. Like I said, I'm gonna be doing 4 or 5 coats, depending how well everything gets buried. And how I do that is, I won't entirely do the whole truck in 4 or 5 coats. What I'll do is I'll make my first 2 or 3 passes on the graphics only, letting the overspray hit everything else. And then that 4th or 5th coat, I'll make that decision whether I want to put 4 or 5. And that very last coat or 2, I'll do the whole entire truck. That way I'm burying these lines, rather than putting useless clear that I'm going to be sanding off anyways on the spots that don't have the artwork, that doesn't need that much clear on top of it. Because you got to understand, I'm going to sand this back down, do some more touch-ups, adding little details, and then re-clearing it all again 4 or 5 times. So those areas that don't need a lot of clear on them, I'm not going to put on, just in the areas with the graphics where I need to level everything out really, really well. And that's just a little tip for saving, you know, trying to save on material usage. That's just one thing I've learned over the years. You don't really need, as long as you put at least 2 coats on the panels that don't have anything that you don't have to bury, then you're fine to sand it back, you know, either sand it and buff it or sand it back down and re-clear. So That's just the industry standard with especially like things I do at work, insurance work. It's only 2 coats of clear is what they allow you to put on. Obviously there are sometimes you got to put 3 just because, but that's industry standard. But with custom stuff, you can go, you just bury this stuff and sand it back off. So it's just the way it works. So hopefully in this video, or then one, if I do break these up, I want to have a video of where it's actually wet and shiny and ready to get sanded back down. I might pick this back up when I start shooting clear. It's just going to get really foggy in this area that I spray in, so you might not be able to see really well. I might just wait until it is actually fully dry, ready to be sanded. That way you guys can see, just how shiny this stuff is, because, in my opinion, their clear is probably one of the best clears you can actually buy for the money. So if you're looking for a really good product, House of Color, I use UC21 is what I've been, especially when doing these graphics. I've got introduced to this stuff when I bought the mixing bank. I always shot the show clear, which is really nice as well. But when you're doing graphics, the UC21 is a little bit thicker, so you can bury this stuff really quick with that. 5 coats might be just enough to bury everything. So, but the show clear, it takes a little bit more, but a little bit differences in, UV protection on them. But either one is a really good clear. Just UC21 is the one that you want if you're going to be burying graphics, artwork, anything like that, because it'll cover really quick, because it's more high solids. So next one up, it's going to be fully cleared. See you guys then. All right, so I've got everything pinstriped besides the orange graphic. I've got it like a dark green on the hood. I don't really like the color, so I'm gonna switch it up. I'm either thinking like a pink or a purple, but I'm gonna mix some enamels together and figure out a color for it. But other than that, everything is pinstriped. I wanna show you guys real quick what it looks like off the truck. So there are a few things after it gets its first clear that I need to go in and do like minor touch-ups with the different colors. But other than that, besides the orange, like I said, it is finished and ready for clear. And some of you aren't familiar with like the old school lowrider scene and the pinstriping. This is kind of like the cross hatching method, especially with this green. I kind of did it my own style. I didn't want to copy anybody else's, so I kind of just went off top of my head with it. And then the purple with the green, it's kind of just got some licks going around everywhere. Makes it really stand off rather than just doing a simple pinstripe. Once you get everything cleared, all the drop shadows will start popping out, and it just makes it look, it's a little bit different than just going through and just hand cleaning pinstripe and everything like I did the silver. Like the silver is just a plain, clean hand pinstripe all the way throughout the whole truck. So there are some things that are just regular old straight edge pinstriping, but with everything else, I wanted the colors to kind of pop off themselves differently. And this is what the customer ultimately wanted. They wanted this look. It's just some dust. Thought it was something else. So it is coming along very quickly. Like I said, all I have to do is the orange, which isn't very much on this truck. I mean, I got the door to do down here, the rocker, a little part on the cab, then the bed, and just both sides of that is going to go a different color. Like I said, I'm thinking like a bright purple if I can make it, because I don't have it, or like a bright pink, which I don't have either. I don't even know if I can make it, but I'm trying to take this magenta color and throw it in with the green, or maybe some of that yellow, and kind of dyeing it down a little bit to make a different, really bright color. Because right now I've got this magenta, I've got the lime green, which isn't lime green. It's actually, I'll show you guys what it looks like. Pinstriped, it's actually like a darker green. I wouldn't consider that lime green to me. This is more lime green to me. So I made that by throwing that with some yellow. So I made that color all by itself because I don't have anything else. And then this lemon yellow, that's what I used with the green to make that lime green. And then I've got just plain old silver. So trying to take those 4 colors and make a color for that orange. But other than that, I might have to wait till Monday to order some from my supplier and get that going. Got the glasses on because I know you guys aren't used to seeing me with glasses, but when I do this type of work, I put my glasses on because I see really well, considering my contacts aren't as strong. So it lets me see every nook and cranny of this when I'm actually pinstriping it. It just makes for a better job for me, and it's a little bit easier for me to be able to see exactly what I'm doing. So yeah, just want to show you guys real quick what it looks like. I'm sure all these videos I'm giving little bits and pieces of this truck is going to get all smashed in one big edited video. I know I don't want to edit videos, but I'm trying to make it one full video from start to finish for you guys to watch. It might be really long, but it is what it is. If I can mash it up between segments and make little videos out of this huge video I'm doing, then I will. But I want to just make it to where you guys can watch one video and get the whole gist of what I'm doing and how to go about doing it, the right steps, way to prep things, how to go about doing each and little process I'm doing on this thing. Because it's just, at the end of the day, it is just paint, but the more prepared you are, the better off your end result's going to be. So just want to show you guys this real quick. Like I said, it's coming along really nice. You can already see the drop shadows inside this pinstripe I did right here. And once everything's lined back together, like you can check it out inside the door, or the bedside and the back of the cab. It's all done too, which was, that probably took the longest out of everything, is getting inside there with that brush. I know I should have took the bed off of it, but it's just me here, and that bed's pretty heavy with the compressor and things that are in it. So I just decided to leave it on there and just, jam it out with it on the truck, which a little bit challenging, but we got it done nonetheless. I can't wait to see this thing clear. The first session of clear, I'm gonna do probably 4 or 5 coats, try to bury everything as possible as I can. This pinstripe is really thick. I know I said I was gonna clear it before I pinstriped it, but I wanted to save 2 days of time because I would have to let it sit before I could sand it. And I wanted to get the pinstripe done, and I was confident enough I could do that, and it's turned out really nice. So I wanted to get that on there, but I'm going to be clearing it once, like I said, 4 or 5 coats depending on how it looks when I get there, and then sand it back down a couple of days later, and then fix every little small thing I need to do with each of these colors that I see that need fixed, and then hammer on another 4 or 5 coats. And possibly then, if the pinstripe's buried for far enough underneath the clear to where I can smooth it out and just flat sand the whole truck down and buff the entire thing. If not, then I'll sand it back down and put another 4 or 5 coats of clear on which is around 15 coats of clear. That's a lot, but you're also sanding everything off every time you re-clear it because you're trying to get as flat as possible, which is the key to doing stuff like this with a lot of graphics, a lot of pinstriping, a lot of layers. And this is just my way I do it, but it works out really well for me. I get it done relatively fast. I've been working on this thing for probably, I think I've got like almost 90 hours in this whole truck, and that's with painting the whole entire thing and doing all the body work with it. So it's not really that bad. It is a lot of time, considering, you know, how small the truck it is, but when you're doing this many colors and this many patterns and candies, and you know, you're painting the whole truck to begin with, you know, it's a lot of time. So that's why I want to make these videos for you guys, so you guys can understand what goes into stuff. Maybe you're a customer of somebody's and you're not understanding why it's taking so long or why it's so much money to do this type of stuff. This is exactly why. If your shop's doing it right on your vehicle, then leave them alone, let them get it done, and just do what they tell you pretty much. I mean, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt when I say that. I mean, you don't want anybody to run over, you know, take your money and run, because you can't get that in this industry. You got to be trustworthy with your shop, and you got to understand that they got to have the time and the money to do this, because materials might not be that expensive. It is expensive, but it might not be as much as what the labor is. You're paying pretty much everything. All right, so the truck is cleared. I got 5 coats on the areas with the graphics, and then I did 1 full coat over the whole truck, over the factory blue. And I did that just because I'm trying to bury all these lines. So when you're doing all these graphics, you know, do it right. You know, you want to be able to just run your hand across it and feel nothing when you're done with it. So you put a lot on, but you're also taking a lot off when you go to sand it, and then you're putting more on to take it back off. So it's a bunch of wasted material, I mean, honestly, but it's the way, you know, it's about the only way when you're doing all this pinstriping, all these graphics, you know, over top of each other. You're gonna have buildup, so you're gonna have to bury all that stuff. So we got 5 coats, like I said, on the graphics, and then 1 over everything again. So I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like right now. That way you get an idea, but I'm gonna sand this back down today and get it ready for all the touch-ups. So I'm gonna show you guys just how nice this stuff came out. And you can kind of see, you know, we're not out in the sun right now, but it has that really wet look. And this isn't even buffed. I mean, this is right after it just, you know, I did this about 24 hours ago, so this is right after. And you can see why, if I get it right there in the light, you can see all these ridges. And this is what I'm talking about when you have all the stuff that you need to bury. All that stuff, you can sand it flat and bury it. That way when you run your hand across this, you don't feel any edges at all. I went ahead and cleared this little piece too. No, don't have anything on it. There's the hood. Hood came out really nice as well. Stuff does have, I mean, you can probably tell by the video, it does have quite a few dirt chunks. Obviously we're not really in a legit booth, you know, with proper ventilation. That's my only ventilation as far as what I have running to get all the exhaust fumes and stuff out of here. But usually your first round of clear, when you're doing all these graphics and everything, you're bound to have a lot of dirt, just because it's your first clear. You know, it's the panel's not as slick, it's not as smooth as what it would be if you would sand it back down and re-clear it. But for being in a, you know, a non-legit paint booth that I made, a homemade curtain setup, this stuff it's actually pretty clean. You know, there's a lot of spots that are just slick. You just kind of see with that sun shining on it how these candies are going to look. You know, to get this thing out in the sun on a really bright sunny day, this stuff is just gonna really pop. So I'll show you this door real quick. Another key tip when you're doing graphics, artwork, or anything like that, you want to make sure you're in the proper, especially when you're clearing. This is what I'm talking about when you're clearing. When you're getting ready to clear everything for the first time or maybe the second time or anything like that, or if you're clearing anything for that matter, you want to make sure you got the right temperature. Temperature goes a long way, especially when putting on this many coats of clear, because it will run on you really fast. It'll start sagging, it'll bunch up, and it'll just run. So let's say this bed, let's say I put a run in somewhere where this candy colors are, sometimes that will grab the candy and pull it down with it, and that means game over. You gotta pretty much start all over in that color, just because when you run and you grab a candy, there's no going in and spotting it in. So you want to make sure that you're doing it in proper temperature, and you're waiting your flash times, and you're just doing everything you can to get this thing to lay out the way you need it. And another tip is, when you're putting on your first coat with all this artwork, you don't want to just hammer it on. You kind of want to do like a really light, kind of like a mist, to where it looks it's not fully slick, but then again, it's not like dry either. You want to kind of go like in between a light coat and a mid-wet coat. And what that does is it allows that clear to lock into those colors on this truck and all these edges and everything. It allows something to bite into it when you go around for the next time, because by that time it's going to get tacked up, especially when you're doing overall. By the time you get to the other side, when you're done, it's going to be ready for that next coat immediately. So you can actually put it on a little bit heavier the second round, just because you allowed that time for that initial tack coat. And that's really important, especially when you're doing like airbrush work. Sometimes things can do really funky stuff on you, and you won't know what you did, but once it starts lifting, or maybe it'll start spider cracking, or maybe it'll start solvent popping on you, it's because you need that initial coat to be like a tack coat and not a full heavy wet coat. And that's just from experience. I've messed up in the past and things like that, and I've just learned to correct it. And that first coat, make sure you put it on there properly when you have artwork, anything like that. That way you give a nice tack to it. So game plan for this now, I've let it dry for 24 hours exactly, pretty much, and it's been about 60-65 in here, so that's good enough to come back in and actually sand this stuff back down and get it all cleaned up. So how I'm going to do that is, I usually do it with the red Scotch-Brite, but on this I'm going to do it with the gray, because for some reason they sent me a box of gray Scotch-Brites, which it's not as coarse as a red, but I mean, it'll just take a little bit longer to get this all scuffed down. And then after that, I'm going to go back over it with 600, and then I'll finish it off with 800. And I'm going to try to get everything as smooth as possible without burning through. That's the trick here, because you don't want to go through and burn through your colors. So in some areas you might not get it all the way slick, some areas you might. So you just got to play that game of like how thin you're going to sand it down to in order to get this stuff to get all. I'm going to show you guys real quick what it looks like. I just got done sanding everything down. I buzzed it over real quick with 1000 at the end of it, just to make it a little bit extra smooth. Just got done blowing off. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like all flat. That way you guys get an idea of how far to go and how far down you need to go to be able to go back through either doing touch-ups or re-clearing. So I'm going to show you guys this and walk you through each step that I did. So you're pretty much just basically prepping the entire panel or car or vehicle again to be painted all over again. You're just going through and being extra cautious just because you don't want to burn through this stuff. Even though there's a total of 5 coats of clear on the graphics and then 1 coat over the whole thing. You still got to be really careful because you are sanding the majority of it off, and you don't want to burn through it, because that's the last thing you want to do. You want to, especially doing all these candy colors, you want to make sure that you keep them on there. That way you don't have to bother going back through and redoing all that work that you just got done doing. It's going to save you guys a lot of time. So yeah, it's just flat, but you go through here and you can pretty much, I'm going to say about 90% of every line you won't be able to fill right now. There is a couple that I left in there just because I didn't want to burn through, like I said. But when you're doing this stuff, you can be the judge of that, of how far down you want to go, because it also dictates how much clear you put on here. I could have put, 6 coats of clear on everything and sanded it down and probably buffed it and got away with it. But I'm just gonna, for insurance purposes, is the way I do it, because I don't want to take that risk. I want as much clear on this thing as possible because it's gonna be sitting out in the sun. And if you know anything about candies, if you only have a couple coats on there, it's not gonna last but a couple years out in the sun, especially if you live in those states where it's really, really hot. That sun's gonna eat right through that clear. So that's why, I want a lot of coats of clear on this when I go to wet sand and buff it. I don't want to take off a lot like I just did. I want to be able to bury everything and just be able to take that top coat off. So relatively, this thing will have 4 or 5 coats of clear on it after it's buffed. So it'll protect it out in the sun. It'll last for years down the road, and it'll be super slick when it's all said and done. So like I said, I just got done blowing this off. I'm going to go through and glass clean everything, re-clean it just like I got to repaint it, because you want this thing to be extra clean. I might even redo the tape and the plastic on here because it's been on here for a long time, and I don't want, when I go to final clear, I don't want any dirt or anything flying off that plastic, getting into the paint, and then having to redo a panel or whatever after I get done with this. Because after I do this and clear it one more time, probably gonna put like 5 or 6 coats on it, honestly. But I plan to be pretty much, that'd be the last time clearing it, because everything, like I said, came out super smooth. Everything's pretty much buried. There's just a little bit of touch-ups in certain areas I want to fix, and other than that, it's ready for final clear. So I've got about 2 or 3 hours worth of touch-ups to do, maybe less than that. But and this is the time right now to take your time and clean everything perfectly and go through, with tape or something to mark your errors that you caught, because you don't want to clear this thing again and be like, oh shoot, I forgot to do that, or oh shoot, that needed fixed. So just go through, take your time, and make sure when you get ready for that final clear that it is ready for the final clear. So other than that, I'm gonna get to cleaning this with glass cleaner. It's just a regular old glass cleaner that I use to clean this stuff. See if I can find it's Spray Away brand. That's what I use everything to pre-clean everything, and then when I get done with the touch-ups and everything, before I clear it, I'll go through and not really wax and grease it, but I'll actually use that waterborne, that KC20, that post-sand cleaner on this thing for a final clean, and then I'll be ready for clear after I tack it. So I'll show you guys pictures after I get done doing all this and when it's done and final clear. So I'm getting excited to get this thing done and out of here. So we got some big things coming up, so stay tuned. Hopefully maybe this will be in the video down the road with the big video.